I've been working on what is roughly a 50-foot diameter pond out on the west end of the main 6-acre site of Edible Acres. And it's, to me, a compelling hybrid between pure human labor and using a little bit of machinery to facilitate. So I'm going to explain in detail what we're up to. The first thing I want to note is that I'm by no means done here. In fact, we've got many hundreds more wheelbarrow loads to extract. We've taken one corner and put in some effort to get a little bit lower so that if we do get a heavy rain, we can see how it wants to hold, how long that water stays in here. But even that's not that deep. It's a tremendous amount of work. I invested in this gas-powered BCS. This is a used machine that a fellow not too far from here who loves rebuilding them took an old one and brought it back to life from the early 90s. And I invested as well in this Berta Rotary Plow, which is a burly implement. And what's great about this is it digs down about, well, the way I have it set, about 8 inches deep. It's about 8 to 10 inches wide. And it doesn't pulverize the soil like crazy, like a rototiller would, but it really does amazing primary decompaction and digging work. And then the shovel work's a little bit easier to work with afterwards. It's still almost entirely going to be human labor, because every shovelful of soil is being lifted, put in a wheelbarrow, and dumped somewhere. But the beauty of that is that every shovelful can go somewhere meaningful. So as this pond gets developed, we're able to take the topsoil and build stupefyingly deep, rich, and loose raised beds that are very close to it. We can send a hole out of the topsoil that has weeds and perennial roots in them to hill our potatoes. So this is just one of many beds that have received 10 to 20, almost 30 wheelbarrow loads of topsoil. And then I've been covering that with lawn clippings as we go. So these potatoes would be very happy for us having dug this pond this year. We can also use that excavated material to start sketching some beautiful permanent raised beds in the landscape and get them set to a simple cover crop. In this case, lots of turnips, lots of Sudan grasses and buckwheats. It's also a tremendous amount of material that can be used to cover a lot of the raw and unfinished hugel mounds that are dotted throughout this landscape and get them to a point where they're going to be ready to actually grow crops next year. As we get deeper into the subsoil that has very low organic matter and high clay content, my good friend Juan and I have been making this berm. We're going to get this about 3 to 4 feet tall, deep in the shade here, get it packed super tight, and then use that berm as a foundation to put a large water cistern to deliver water to all of these new gardens that are being developed, in part through hand digging and mulching, and in part through the excavation of all that soil to build beds. There's some islands of material in here. This is an American persimmon, and that's miscanthus grass, both of which we want to preserve. So we're going to let these be until the fall and then dig them out, but we'll excavate in rings right around them all the way. And you can see where Juan was working today on digging out the root system of what was a very large European buckthorn. Once that's out, we can run the BCS through to do the loosening and decompaction so that we can then harvest the soil. You can see the soil is very tight, very, very hard to dig if every shovelful has to also break it up. But with what so far has been 1.25 gallons of fuel, the BCS has made such fine textured soil with that rotary plow, and then all we have to do is scoop it up piece by piece and send it out. So lots more beds to be developed. I'm going to document this project as it goes along, but I thought I'd capture it here right before a good heavy rain's supposed to come in, and we'll see how it continues to go. The hope is to see this get maybe 2 to 3 feet deeper throughout the whole thing, and use some of that subsoil to berm up a substantial dike in this area so that the water level can periodically get almost that high. So if we get a heavy rain, it can wick into these large beds that frame all around it. And the sill, the overflow, will end up being in the northwest corner. So what that means is the water, when this is completely filled, will overflow, run through a little trench that we'll dig, and start dropping out into some other ponds that we have that are closer to the main garden areas. So lots of layers of value here, slow and steady, very, very hard physical work, but pretty rewarding, and so many yields of all this crumbly topsoil covered in cover crop. It's just gonna be amazing to see how many more gardens we can develop from the quote-unquote waste material of excavating this pond. At an average diameter of 50 feet, it is certainly not a perfect circle, but roughly 50-foot diameter, if we can make it an average of 3 feet deep throughout, so ideally much deeper in the center, average of 3 feet, this will hold over 300,000 gallons of water, and this is the highest point in the landscape, so very high leverage, very high resiliency that comes with this. Fingers crossed, and hoping we get all the excavation done before we get back into a rainy season so that it's online fully for next year. We'll share updates as it evolves. Thank you so much for watching.